We're going to start. I am Jean-Marie Guéhenno, the Arnold Salzman Professor of Practice at the Salzman Institute and the Director of the Kent Global Leadership Program on Conflict Resolution at SIPA. And I felt very strongly as a conflict resolution practitioner that this was really an important time to have a panel on Haiti. Haiti has had a proud but tragic history. It was the first country in the Caribbean to get rid of slavery in defeating the French army there. But then it paid a high price, a very high price for it. It had to pay reparations for more than a century. And that explains in large part why the people of Haiti are often suspicious of foreigners. They have been exploited by the French, by my compatriots. They have been occupied by the Americans. They have very little good things to say about foreigners. And to be honest, that includes the United Nations. You all know how the United Nations behaved both stupidly and shamefully when a Nepalese battalion introduced cholera on the island. I don't think the UN has always been as bad as it was then, to be honest, but that was a shameful page. I think there were better moments. I think after the fall of Aristide, the sort of coup that brought down Aristide, the UN actually did a good job. I may be partial because I was the Undersecretary for Peacekeeping at the time. So I admit my partiality, but I think the special representative of the UN at the time, Juan Gabriel Valdez, Chilean diplomat, really did not do the bidding of the big powers. He tried to listen to the Haitians. The elections that were organized and that brought Préval to power were, on the whole, honest elections. And there were, for a few years, some improvement, political improvement, in the sense that there was the beginning of legitimacy for the authority, for the presidency. And in terms of security, the support of committed Latin American troops from Brazil, from Chile, and other countries did help stabilize a bit the country. But then the earthquake, but I'm sure that was not enough, but it was a good beginning. But then the country was hit by the terrible earthquake of 2010. We don't know how many people died, 200,000 probably. I mean, that's a huge figure. It was a total tragedy for the country. And frankly, since Haiti has never recovered. And worse, it has gone, in some ways, downhill. And here we are now. And what is terrible is that many Haitians who didn't trust, as I said, the foreigners, don't even trust their leaders now. I mean, I've heard from people that sometimes they even regret the time of the awful Duvalier, which says something about the present situation with the gangs. And so there is a risk of despair. But I think despair is often an excuse for indifference. And the last thing we want is indifference. I think we need to think through how things can go better, how Haitians, who are very resilient people, you see it in the Haitian diaspora, which actually plays a very important role in keeping Haiti afloat. The remittances of the diaspora are essential for the survival of Haiti. This is a very resilient people, and I do hope that having touched bottom really now, there will be the resiliency of the Haitian people will make the difference. I'm now going to hand over to Marc Jacquin to introduce what I think is a really stellar panel to discuss what we need to do, what needs to be done in Haiti. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Marie, and good afternoon and welcome. It's good to be here. I'm very excited to moderate this panel. You'll see because of the range of expertise, experiences, and insights that the panelists will offer. But before I introduce the panelists, and it's interesting because Jean-Marie and I did not compare notes, did not coordinate our introductory remarks, because I felt the same thing. As excited as I am to moderate the panel, there's always also a little bit of discomfort when talking about Haiti, and I'll very briefly explain why. I've been working in and on Haiti for 26 years now, on and off. Actually, I graduated from SIPA in 2000, and my first job sent me to l'Écaille to work on a microfinance project. And ever since, I've had the opportunity to go there, and now as the Chief of Staff for the Department of Safety and Security, we're following, obviously, the Gang Suppression Force issue closely. But I'm also a French and US citizen and a UN staffer. And for those of you who know this history, and Jean-Marie gave kind of the broad contours of this history, when the full story of Haiti is written, it will include chapters where both countries and the UN will feature prominently, and not always for the right reasons. And as you said, Jean-Marie, it does feel like Haiti is still paying the price for having had the audacity to shatter one of the worst features of the old world order. But I also think it's a story that is that's not well understood, even fully known. I think it's a story that's full of false narratives or convenient narratives which are not very accurate. So I do think, and this is the opportunity tonight, to tell the story more truthfully, honestly, more clearly, in a way that connects the past with the present, but also in a way that illuminates some of the opportunities and the possibilities for the future. So that's what the panel is going to do. We might not go as far back as 1804, but we will go back in time first to understand the root causes, what got us to this situation in 2026. We'll also examine the responsibilities and complicities of the international community. We'll scrutinize one of the stories that's making the headlines right now, the Gang Suppression Force. And then we'll end by looking at the future with a particular focus on the youth of Haiti. So on that note, I'd like to welcome our four panelists. Thank you for being here. Let me briefly introduce them. Joining online is Jacqueline Charles. Good afternoon, Jacqueline. So Jacqueline is a U.S. journalist who is also the Pulitzer Prize finalist for her coverage of the Haiti earthquake in 2010, and she's the Caribbean correspondent for the Herald Tribune. Miami Herald, sorry. Michel Montaz, thank you, welcome. Michel is also a journalist from Haiti who previously served as the spokesperson for UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon from 2007 to 2010, if I'm not mistaken. But previously, Michel held a broadcasting career with an independent radio station, which was interrupted by forced exile 3 times, and notably in 2003, Michel fled Haiti after an assassination attempt and attacks or threats on the radio station. Welcome. Dave Fils-Aimé, no relations, I thought I'd say it for you, is the director and founder of Basketball pour encadrer la jeunesse, BAL, which is an NGO that doesn't just focus on basketball. I just found out to my dismay, because I'm a basketball fan. No, it's an NGO that does a lot of work with youth who are affected by gang activity, but he's also the founder and president of Dali Real Productions, a multimedia company that focuses on projects in Haiti. And finally, Bill O'Neill is an international human rights lawyer and currently serves as the UN Commissioner's designated human rights expert on Haiti. Again, thank you to all 4 of you. What we thought we'd do is just to set the scene. And I'm going to ask first Jackie if you wouldn't mind giving us a very brief summary, and I recognize it's difficult because the situation is very complex and fast evolving, but for the benefit of the audience, could you share with us kind of the main headlines of where we are now in Haiti at the political level? And then I'll ask Dave to also give us a sense of the lived realities in Haiti. Dave was in Haiti just a week ago, came back from Haiti a week ago, and that I think will help us set the scene for the themes we'll discuss. Jackie, over to you.
Okay, right. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think first of all, we should start 2021. 2021, July 7th, the president of Haiti was assassinated in the middle of the night in his bedroom. That assassination has still not resolved in terms of finding who did it. There's actually a trial that will be taking place in the United States starting next month. But 2021 becomes the marker because I think that's when a lot of people have discovered this gang crisis, but in fact, the crisis existed even before 2021. But with that assassination, we saw the country plunge deeper into anarchy. Today, where we are, there is not one elected official in the country, no president, no parliament, even the local officials have not been elected. There has not been a general election in Haiti for 10 years as of this year. Last elections took place in 2016. Just a few days ago, we had a 9-member presidential panel. They serve as the executive. 7 of them were voting members, 2 were quote unquote observers. That panel dissolved without achieving its main priority, which was to hand power over to an elected president and parliament. So as a result of that 21 months, almost 22 months in office, Haitian political actors, civil society actors not being able to agree on the next part of the transition, the third part of the transition. You now have the Prime Minister, Alexis de Fizeme, who is a member of the private sector, who is now in charge with his government. Haiti also was out of a constitution. So you've got this political situation where no elected officials in a country where armed gangs today control up to 90% of the capital, where 60% of your electorate are living under gang control. Put it more reasonably, 1 in 4 individuals in Port-au-Prince are living in a neighborhood controlled by armed gangs, and the pressure is building from the US, the UN, and others for this country to finally hold elections. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Dave, can I now ask you to, with this political backdrop in mind, just translate that into what it's like for people in Haiti, and perhaps in particular in Port-au-Prince, but maybe not just in Port-au-Prince. What's it like on a daily basis?
Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you, Mark. So I live in Haiti and Port-au-Prince full-time. And to travel here, to be here at Columbia today, I left Haiti about a week ago. And on my last night in Port-au-Prince, this was the scene, just to give you an idea, near my neighborhood. So this was a couple of people in the neighborhood who set up these tires on fire to protest against the government as the mandate of the CPT was about to expire in a few days, as Jacqueline mentioned. And to leave Port-au-Prince to come here, there are no direct flights from the Port-au-Prince International Airport. It's been closed to international flights for about 2 years now, since November 2023. So I had to take an airplane from Port-au-Prince to Cap Haitian, Haiti's second city, and from there take a flight to Miami. And as Jackie mentioned, you have a huge percentage, some people say as much as 90% of Port-au-Prince completely controlled by the gangs. And you've had over 1.5 million people displaced by the gangs over the last couple of years. I myself am among those 1.5 million people. Last year in March, I had to abandon my home as the gangs got closer to taking over the neighborhood where I had lived for the past 5 years, Paco. I had to leave my neighborhood, and I also had to relocate the main office of my nonprofit twice last year. So this situation also led to us having to rent other places for members of our staff and some of the youth that we work with to live, because they had to also leave their neighborhoods. So my organization, a small nonprofit, funding is already difficult, especially with the situation here in the U.S. With USAID closing, and we had to allocate about a quarter of our budget to adapt to the situation right now.
Thank you, Dave. So Jean-Marie spoke in his introduction about a trajectory since the earthquake. Michelle, I was wondering if you could now start us off with your thoughts on what the root causes. How did the country get to this situation that Jacqueline and Dave summarized for us? When we were preparing for this panel, a number of you were talking about some of the missed opportunities after the earthquake. Now, you can go back in time beyond the earthquake if you want, but yeah, I was wondering if you could just frame the issues around the root causes.
Well, I think the root causes. Oh, sorry. Well, I think the root causes are many. But I think I would single out three events in Haiti's recent history that might have led us to the moment we live right now. Of course, I'm not counting one important element, which is the transnational drug and traffic trade, which really has given additional impulse to the power of the gangs and how they control the country. Those three major moments I'm thinking of is first the fall of the Duvalier dictatorship. The dictatorship of Duvalier rested on a complete control of the country, with the army and the Macoute, which was the paramilitary group that Duvalier created. They actually established a system of terror within communities. It was not terror at the top, it was terror at the bottom, where people lived, where people functioned. And this has left, the Macouts are gone, even though they did survive the regime, and beyond the fall of Duvalier, the Macouts were still on the scene for quite a few years. They are gone now. However, there is a whole structure and a whole culture of violence that has remained within the communities. And I think this is one of the elements that might have contributed to what we have today. The second event, which I think is important, is 1994, when coming back from his first exile, Jean-Bertrand Aristide decommissioned the Haitian armed forces, actually abolished the armed forces. So Haiti no longer had an army. And this meant that the armed soldiers were free to go, they had weapons. They were no longer in the structure of an army, but they became actually the backbone of the paramilitary forces that really created the problems that we have today. And the third event was, as Mark mentioned, the earthquake of 2010. And all these three things have shaped Haiti's crisis today. You mentioned missed opportunities, and I think there are quite a few of them also. But one missed opportunity was after the earthquake, and to me it's an important element. There was, because people were fleeing the capital, Port-au-Prince, where there had been so many dead, as Jean-Marie described, homes were destroyed. Port-au-Prince was rubbles. And people were going toward the province towns where they came originally from to start something that became a decentralization process, which never happened. It was in the 1987 Constitution, but had never happened. And what happened is that the UN, the international aid, was focused on Port-au-Prince. People left. They had free buses given by the government to go to where they were going. And then they came back because that's where the aid was. The aid they needed was in Port-au-Prince. And that's where the international community was delivering aid. So that's one of the elements, and it is, I'm underlining this fact, because it is what is happening today. There is a de facto decentralization of Port-au-Prince. I think David mentioned how he what he had to do to get here. And that decentralization could be encouraged. And if it is not encouraged now, and if it's not supported, not only by the Haitian authorities, but by also the international community who is coming with gang suppression force, there are other elements that are part of security. This is one of them.
Thank you. And so we'll come back to a number of these elements, including the role of the international community. I think the relationship between Port-au-Prince and the province has always been something very problematic. But thank you for highlighting both the culture and the infrastructure of violence, dating back to the 80s, but probably even further back in time. Thank you for framing some of these issues. Dave or Bill, do you want to add now? I'd like to open it up just for the panel to respond, to add to. Maybe can I ask you, Bill, to add any additional perspectives on the root causes or respond to what Michel said?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, and thanks to Jean-Marie and Dove and the organizers of this. Thank you for inviting me. Maybe it's just a nuance that I think Michel was getting at. I think one of the other, well, two big ones. Impunity, I mean, writ large. There's been massive impunity in Haiti for quite a long time. It's hurt, I'm sure it pains, but Michel's late husband, Jean-Dominique, was assassinated going to the radio station one morning. In that case, there's never been a resolution. There's never been anyone held accountable for that killing. There are many and massacres. And the president, we heard the president, they still really haven't figured out who killed the president. So the theme of impunity, I think for me as a human rights lawyer, is key to understanding, partially again, Haiti's complicated, but that's one big factor. And it's not only impunity of that type. I'm focusing lately on my missions when I go to Haiti, trying to figure out, why, even where it's safe, where there are no gangs, why aren't the schools working properly? Why isn't there healthcare, medicine in clinics? Why is the state largely absent for most Haitian citizens? And especially was the case in the poorer neighborhoods, and we link up with the gangs and why they're gangs in the first place. There's been impunity within governance. And by that I mean people with responsible positions in Haitian government have not all, but many have not done what they're supposed to do. They literally have not been performing their duties, their jobs, and they were never disciplined. They were never corrected. They were never fired. They were never whatever. I've been to courthouses in big Haitian cities Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, and there's no one there. And I've just been to the prison where it's overflowing with people because they haven't been processed in the courts. 82% of people in Haitian prisons have never been convicted of anything. They're awaiting trial. And yet you have an empty courthouse on a weekday. Why is that? So for me, that's a big issue. How do we get better governance, responsible governance, accountability imposed on people who are responsible for delivering basic services and making sure human rights are observed? The second one, we'll come back to this, I'll just mention it, is corruption. Corruption, Haiti just this week, Transparency International issued its annual report on perceptions of corruption in the world. Haiti came in yet again, always near the bottom, 169 out of 182. So it's among the most corrupt countries in the world. That's been a huge problem, draining resources and, again, services, and all kinds of problems arise from that issue. So I'll stop there.
Thanks. Michel, because one question I would ask is, why is it tolerated? And I know it's a simplistic way of framing the question, but when you're describing this, it does beg the question, why is it tolerated? Michel, on this, or if you want to
What I was thinking of is that there is one major root causes in the situation right now, is the deep inequalities in Haitian society. It's a class society, and there is very little possibilities of young people who are now members. They constitute about almost half the enrollment in the gangs, Because there are no opportunities. And this is one of the root causes, which I didn't have time to talk about earlier, but I think it is important to underline. There is a saying in Haiti, you cannot get a job unless you have a parrain, which means unless you are sponsored by someone who is powerful or who is rich. So if you don't have a parrain, which is a godfather, then you don't stand a chance. And the gangs have been providing work and providing economic opportunities, quote unquote. They have created networks around the kidnappings. They hire people to actually feed the prisoners that they keep in jail until they keep in those temporary homes. You know, they have their own economy, which is structured around their criminal activities.
Thank you.
How is it tolerated, you ask? I don't know.
Well, Jackie, I see you nodding. Do you want to
Yes.
add to that? Over to you, and then
Yes,
Dave, I'll
I
come to you.
think, yeah, I think we answered the question on why it's tolerated. It's tolerated because everybody needs it. And I agree, the inequality, the huge levels of inequality and where people can move in and out. I mean, lately I've been saying that a lot of well-to-do Haitians didn't realize that there was a gang problem or insecurity problem until it went into the hills of Port-au-Prince. But the problem was always there. I like to say that, you know, as Haitians, we have a munsayo those people, you know, until that problem hits you. I wrote a 3-part series last year about the thousands of rapes that are happening, gang rapes, literally collective rapes, women, girls, even men and boys during these gang wars. And I heard more from non-Haitians than I did from Haitians. And when I heard from a Haitian, it was mostly some people outside of the country as opposed to inside. So there's that huge level of tolerance. And just to give you an example of why it's tolerated, a few years ago, I interviewed a presidential candidate about what would be the first thing that he would do if he became president. He says, well, I am going to pass a law to get rid of Abba, which is down with. Because people would write on the walls, you know, and says, down with this president, down with this elected official. Well, when he became president, he didn't do it. And I would joke and I said, yes, because if I get rid of Abba, I can't have Vive, long live. So that's what I see constantly is that even when people want to do the right thing, the idea is that Haiti is a spaghetti. So I may touch this person or that person, or I may need this benefit tomorrow. So if I shut it off. So until you address the impunity, the lack of accountability, I think we're going to continue to go into this cycle.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. Dave, did you want to add anything?
Well, in terms of the corruption, I mean, I think about the Presidential Council. You had 3 members of the council who were accused of directly asking the president of one of the biggest banks in Haiti, the National Public Bank of Credit, to give them money so he could retain his post. So, you know, it's widespread. And in terms of, you know, the lack of opportunities for the youth, I mean, this is something that I noticed, you know, in my native neighborhood, Maltisan, which is one of the communities that, you know, where you have multiple gangs in that community. And going back to Maltisan, moving back there back in 2013, I saw the gangs, and that many of the youth just saw that was the only option, you know, provided to them. And a lot of the people that I grew up with in Maltisan, you know, once they succeed and they get jobs, they just move out of the neighborhood. And so you have no role models, no opportunities for the youth. And so joining a gang is the easiest thing for them to do, which is one of the things that pushed me to start our nonprofit as a way to provide them with alternatives. Unfortunately, the Haitian government has never prioritized that, even though you have over 50% of the population is under 25 years old. The country is extremely young, but the youth aren't a priority. And, you know, with the lack of opportunities that they have, and you have all these gangs, they see it as, a lot of them see it as their only way out, really.
I just wrote a story before we started that UNICEF said today that gang membership last year went up by 200%. And that over 1.4 million people are displaced, and half of them are children. So this is a real problem, and kids are either being forced into recruitment or they're joining gangs because they need to feed their families.
Bill?
Yes, I just want to pick up on that. I interviewed 3 young men, boys, 12, 13 years old, in a juvenile. It's the only functioning prison now in the whole capital. Is originally built for only juveniles, but now since the National Penitentiary and the Croix du Bouquet prison was overrun by gangs, they now put adults in there. So it's a human rights catastrophe. They're boys, girls, men, women, all mixed up. But I talked to these 3 young boys, and I asked them, they had all been in a gang. And I interviewed them separately, and they all had pretty much the same story. And I said, why did you join? And they basically said, especially this one boy, I'll just focus on his story. He was a street child. He had been abandoned by his family, was living on the street, begging, stealing. And one day somebody came up to him and said, would you like a hot meal every day? Yeah. Would you like to earn a couple dollars a week? Yes. Okay, you're going to be a lookout. You're going to stay where you are at the street level. You're watching everybody come and go, but you're going to tell us who's coming and going, if you see a police car, whatever it is. And the other 2 are the same thing. We were hungry. We had no options. We had no possibility of a job or schooling. So they joined the gang until they were caught. And I think that's just in UNICEF's account, the report they just came out with this afternoon, indicates that's even intensifying, which is hard to imagine.
So in a way, you're all describing a vicious cycle of lawlessness, total absence of the state, exploitation of suffering and unaddressed needs, and feeding off a culture and architecture of violence. So again, unless anyone wants to add, I thought we could pivot now to the role of the international community, because the UN's been there for a long, long time. There's massive amounts of aid officially, so big international presence. Bill, can I ask you to start us off on this and just help us explain what the role of the international community, and when I say international community, I don't mean to restrict it to just the UN and the aid community. There's also the diplomatic engagement, but what's been the role, and what are as I mentioned earlier, the complicities, the responsibilities of the international community in this situation?
Thanks. Yeah, that's a, again, big, complicated question. We could go back to actually 16, whatever it was, and then 1804, but the ransom that France imposed, as Haitians rightly call it. But I'll stick to more recent history in the interest of time. And Jean-Marie mentioned, I think one of the blackest marks in UN history, and not only in Haiti, I go to other countries and I hear, say, the cholera. That was a catastrophic episode for the United Nations, the Nepali troops. I won't go into all the details. The other issue, I'm not going to be all negative, so just bear with me. I'll try to get that out of the way, the really bad stuff out of the way. Then there was also the sexual exploitation and abuse issue by some, not all of course, but some peacekeepers in previous missions. And then the other issue I would raise was more on the political side, and then Michelle can speak to this better than I can. I think also a big mistake and big missed opportunity that the international community certainly was complicit in was rushing elections in 2010 after the earthquake. It was just way too soon. And not only rushing, but kind of fixing, rigging, someone might say, about who won. And that led, in a way, 2010 to where we are today. And I'm urging right now, I'm going to tie this to some more current issues, I'm urging anyone that will listen to me, please don't rush elections again. There's no way Haiti's anywhere near ready for elections, and so, but we'll come to that. So I think there's been certainly a mixed record for UN peacekeepers. There's been some good things done, and here I will not have a brief, but I would say I'm also partial a bit because I've worked in different operations for the United Nations in Haiti. And I'll go back even earlier than Valdez. The MICIV, the first real on-the-ground UN presence in Haiti, was a human rights field operation that I was part of when in 1992, in early 93. And I think we did some really important work trying to help, especially civil society, and I think that's something that's carried through the better parts of more recent UN presences in Haiti. I think the parts that have been quite successful were helping to reinforce civil society, human rights groups, women's groups, journalists, in every way we could. The other aspect I would say that we were fairly productive and successful was helping to create for the first time in Haitian history a judges school. There had never been a place where judges would be trained, and also some objective criteria put into who becomes a judge, and not because you had an uncle or your friend or a nephew or you bought your job, you actually could qualify for that job. So I think certainly there's a lot of issues, problems that were created in the cholera case, exacerbated by different UN presidencies, but I also think nothing's black and white anywhere, but certainly not in Haiti. I think there were some very good initiatives that were begun that are still continuing. And I'll just add, to the present, the international community right now, I'm very worried about a lot of things, but one is the flow of weapons to Haiti right now are mostly from the United States, overwhelmingly from the United States. There's not a gun or bullet manufactured in Haiti. The gangs get all of their weaponry. Somehow it originates in the US, it comes directly or through the DR or through sometimes Jamaica, Turks and Caicos, but it's getting to Haiti, originating in the United States. And that has to stop. And that role for the international community, there is an arms embargo the Security Council has authorized. It's being violated right and left. That's a really, really big problem. And the other issue I'd raise for current concern, and again, I'm a US citizen, so it pains me to say this, but the question of temporary protected status. There are 300, and Jackie's written a lot about this in the article today about the judge. I mean, you might want to talk about that later. The decision could come soon that would permit the US to deport up to 300, who knows, but at least 300 to 350,000 Haitians. There is no way Haiti is ready or capable, or it's just totally illegal. I've said this many times. There's not a way to have a safe, dignified return, not only from the United States, but from any country to Haiti right now. That role of the international community, if that happens, then we are facing really, really much more serious problems in Haiti. So I'll stop there and let others jump in.
No, thanks, Bill. And anyway, I'd like to open it up to the rest of the panel, but one question that keeps coming back, and you started, going there, Bill, when you talked about the weapons going into Haiti. Because, Jackie, earlier you talked about why it serves a lot of people's interest to tolerate impunity and so forth. A similar question can be asked, and I know it might be difficult for you to answer it, but whose interest does it serve to have Haiti in this current situation from an international perspective? Because there's been so much done in terms of development assistance, political engagement, and yet here we are in 2026. So some people are asking, somebody internationally must be benefiting from this situation.
You must be Haitian. I mean, this is what the Haitians always think. And I mean, as a reporter on the front lines, there is no big conspiracy. Honestly, it's where the left hand doesn't know the right hand. I mean, Haitians often think that in the US government, they wake up every morning thinking about Haiti. How am I going to screw Haiti over, or how am I going to help Haiti? And honestly, they don't. And often, I mean, if you look at this issue with TPS and the judge, Reyes, who today spoke about the death threats that she received after pausing the Department of Homeland Security's order to end TPS status, which is allow over 300,000 Haitians to live and work legally in the United States as a result of conditions in their country. But, when you follow her questioning, what you saw was she raised the contradictions. She said to the Trump administration, how can you, on the one hand, designate these armed gangs in Haiti as terrorists, global terrorists at that? How can you speak to the fact that, 70 to 80% of the hospitals don't function? You've, lobbied in the international community at the UN Security Council in order to get a gang suppression force. And it means exactly that, to suppress gangs. And we've got 15 countries who basically offered up, 11,000. This is the US government. And then say, but Haiti is safe enough for Haitians to return. And by the way, yes, the FAA has banned commercial flights from going into Haiti since 2024 of November. So American flights cannot go there. There is a level 4, the highest level for American citizens. The U.S. Embassy is down to bare minimum because if something happens to you, especially with kidnappings, they cannot help you. Over 8,000 people were sexually violated last year. Over 8,000 people were killed, and this reality. So she's saying, what is it? So when you see that contradiction of the policy from the same government, that has been the story in Haiti. Yes, there's been development assistance. Yes, there's been focus, but the left hand is not talking to the right hand, sometimes within our very own governments.
Thanks for this. Michelle?
You mentioned international assistance. Bill talked about some of the positive aspects of the different minister in particular, in terms of the judiciary, in terms of reform of the national police. However, there is one thing that really bothers me. It's the fact that so much aid was was offered by the private citizens in this country. They put the money to the Red Cross. They gave money to a number of organizations to help Haiti. The amount of money that was given was not translated. It was translated in the first instance on immediate aid, and that worked. Health support, food assistance. But when it came to the middle and long-term economic assistance to Haiti, there was one major flaw. The Haitians were never consulted. The minister came to a point where it substituted itself after the earthquake to the Haitian authorities. So did the Americans, so did the Canadians, so did the so-called core group. So you cannot aid people without knowing what they really need and what they really want. And you don't even ask them what they need and what they want. And in fact, I still remember vividly, I was at MINUSTA for 18 months. And I remember vividly a meeting with President Bill Clinton saying that they had a whole table discussing assistance to Haiti, long-term assistance to Haiti. The Haitian technicians who were there were never given a chance to speak. And I think this is the biggest flaw of the after-earthquake. There was assistance given. It was badly used. A lot of it went back to the donor countries. Very little of it really helped in the middle or long term.
Michelle, I want to add to that too. The international community offered billions of dollars, about over 10 billion, and a lot of that never made it to Haiti. And when you even see the interim IHRC that President Clinton and Jean-Marc Spelry, who was the prime minister, that they chaired, it was just a clearinghouse for countries to say, here's what we're doing, but they would not pool their money together. And I remember 3 actual incidents. One was when President Clinton realized that grassroots organizations had no access to this money based on how the IHRC was constructed by the US and others. And he did not like that. The other thing was the fact that where they did come up with a formula to pool the money, it was the World Bank, and they were charging 8% on the money in order to access the money. And there was one very heated meeting where he was very surprised and shocked and basically dropped expletives of the fact that you're charging 8% to people for money that is supposed to be used for assistance. And the final example I have of that is Jean-Marc Spelry, where you talk about, Haitians not consulted. Jean-Marc Spelry was the, prime minister at the time. Part of an elected government that had just been hit with this devastating 7.0 earthquake, which according to him, 316,000 Haitians died, not 25,000 as some in the international community wanted us to believe. And I saw bodies. So I saw more than 25,000 bodies. And it was before the big UN donor conference, and the international was pushing one narrative, and Jean-Marc Spelry, who literally had been sleeping with his passport on the floor of his PM office that had been badly damaged, was fighting back because he says, we need to talk about the long term, the medium term. We need to talk about development. We need to talk about how do we get us out of poverty. The international community came and says, we just want to give poor people houses. Well, Haiti law did not allow for that. So they were all, when Michelle talks about those missed opportunities, it's things like these where the government, but oftentimes too, you ask Haitian governments, what do you want? And they don't know what they want. You ask civic society, what do you want? And they can't agree, like the moment we're in. But in those instances where they do say, here's what we want, I think there needs to be there needs to be a respect for that. And that's why I think we need to go forward, especially with this gang suppression force. Today, a lot of Haitians in civil society are saying, we need to recognize gender-based violence. We need to do a peace plan. We need to find a way out of this. We need to address the kids and separate the kids from the gang leaders. And so far, nobody is hearing them.
Thanks, Jackie. Dave?
Yeah, to go back to the idea of missed opportunities, especially after the earthquake. I mean, I think there are issues with both the international community and the Haitian government. The international community often did not consult the Haitian government, but at the same time, you see with scenarios in which the Haitian government did have funds. You look at the Petrocaribe deal with Venezuela, through which the Haitian government had access to a couple of $1 billion directly, and most of that money was wasted, right? You have former prime ministers and presidents who've been sanctioned by the US, Canada, and the UN, the European Union. You have a former prime minister who was sanctioned for stealing $60 million from that pool of funding. So, you can't build a prosperous Haiti without having the Haitian government involved, but you also have the issue of corruption at the highest levels of the Haitian government.
Thanks. Michelle? Do you want to add anything? At all levels. Bill, do you want to wrap up this segment with any thoughts based on this exchange?
I just want to mention it's a little a true story, and it's positive. To my mind, the best, most efficient governmental entity working in Haiti right now is the unit investigating corruption. The ULCC is the French, an acronym in the French. They do incredible work. I've met the director every time I go. He gets death threats every day. When his people are at press conferences, they have to cover their heads because they are investigating some of the most important and powerful people in Haiti for corruption. And they're incredibly brave. They need support. They need help. They're going after. They announced today that the 3 counselors that Dave mentioned, of the 7 that had tried to extort this bank president to keep his job, they said now they're no longer president, quote unquote. They have lost whatever immunity. That was quite dubious anyway. But now they certainly don't have any more claim to immunity. We're going to investigate those 3. And I hope I wish them well. But so there is hope. And I think there are some institutions like that in Haiti that are really trying to do the things the right way to establish accountability. But they take great risks literally in doing so.
But Bill, the TPC also passed a decree in December, basically protecting themselves from any prosecution once they leave office. And if you look at ULCC, they do the reports, but then it doesn't go anywhere in the judiciary. And it's the same frustration the police. The police, they have a saying, we arrest and the judges release.
I agree. I think the judiciary will come. Yeah, I want to mention that briefly because there are 2 new judicial pôle judiciaire in French. I don't know how you would translate Anglo-Saxon system. Anyway, 2 new tribunals within the Haitian justice system. One is to go after financial crime and corruption, money laundering. They are supposed to have chosen within Haiti judges, prosecutors with special training, international advisors to address what Jackie just said. The problem is the ULCC, at one point, I think they had submitted 110 cases, well-founded evidence of corruption, and out of those 110, there's been 1 conviction. So clearly you had a huge problem with the justice system, mostly because it was not independent. It was subject to all kinds of influences. Anyway, let's hope, that's a start. The other pôle judiciaire is going to deal with sexual violence and gang violence. And there's going to need a lot of help to help those Haitian jurists do the jobs correctly. On the decree, I'm hoping all my Haitian lawyer friends are going to show that's unconstitutional and won't be followed. But you're right, it's there for now. And let's hope that that's going to be recent history very soon. But yeah, this is a problem. You're going into huge headwinds. Absolutely. If you're going to go after these big fish and the influential people that have the power, you're going to face huge headwinds and resistance. And here at the international community really has to be creative and I think dedicated to help those Haitians do the right thing.
Thanks, Bill. All right, so this takes us to now 2026 and one of the stories that's making headlines, the Gang Suppression Force. Michelle, do you want to start with your thoughts on the Gang Suppression Force, whether this is the solution or one of the solutions to Haiti's problems? And when we talked about this when we were preparing, remember we said, is this déjà vu or is this a real opportunity?
I think it's very difficult to say at this point. We know that the gang suppression is not on.
There you go.
We know that the gang suppression force is supposed to have 5,500 people, the military, police, plus 50 civilians. So far, it lacks funding, and so far, it's not a reality. What we have right now is an embryo of that force. On terms of the basis on which the force was created, and in terms of the reaction on the other sides, even though, and Jean-Marie underlined it, there is a lot of suspicion on the part of Haitians in general, but they would welcome anything that would solve the gang situation. So I think it's, there are several ways in which that gang can actively change the situation on the ground. However, there is a situation, a very complicated and complex set of forces on the ground. We have the gangs, but we also have the government has hired a private firm, the Eric Prince outfit. They have mercenaries, and they have been using drones to attack neighborhoods, supposedly neighborhoods that are controlled by gangs. In the meantime, a lot of people are being killed. And so we have that force on the ground. We have the army, which now is being given the opportunity to import, to bring weapons, because the army for a long time had a US embargo imposed on them. They could not have any weapons. So now it has been lifted. So you're going to have that on the ground. You have the national police. My question is, how effective are those forces going to work together to really solve the security issue? And to me, the security issue goes beyond sheer security. It goes beyond killing gang members. The mission that came before, the Kenyan mission, never really did anything substantial in terms of they would kill a few gang members with the help of, while supporting the national police, but no important head of gangs was ever arrested, was ever judged, was ever killed. So I think there are a lot of questions on the gang suppression force, on how efficient it can be. Of course, we know it has the support, the American support, and as we could see in the event of the last few days, when 3 warships were in the Port-au-Prince harbor just before they changed government, before they affirmed their support to Alix Fils-Aimé, the prime minister, and saying they did not want the CPT, that they had to go. And so there are all those elements on the ground. So I just wanted to put that out.
Now, you're describing quite a volatile mix. Dave, what's your perspective, and what also are you hearing in Port-au-Prince about this gang suppression force?
Well, before I get to the gang suppression force, if you're doing an analysis of the security apparatus in Haiti right now, you have an army that has less than 2,000 soldiers, right? You have a police force that has less than 10,000 officers. And a lot of these officers are assigned to protect members of government. I have a friend who told me you could probably maybe mobilize about 5,000 or 6,000 of them at any given moment, right? And many of these police officers are also corrupt, some of them directly affiliated with the gangs. I remember a gang leader in Martissan, one of his deputies was a police officer, right? So when you have this situation, Bill and I have been having these conversations for years now. Like, for me, I see the only way that you could really resolve this situation is to have some sort of outside force coming in, because you don't have the numbers, and a lot of these officers who are either in the army or in the police, so many of them are corrupt. You'd have to go through a whole vetting process, to figure out which ones you can trust. And so many of the operations that the police have done before have been sabotaged because of corrupt police officers within the ranks, right? So, I think it's not the ideal scenario, but honestly, I can't imagine Haiti being able to resolve the situation without having some sort of outside force coming in.
Bill, from your and from a human rights lens, what do you think about this?
I have some concerns, to be honest, and I've made them known. I'm concerned, and it also links up to what's been said about the private security force, the Eric Prince operation, which there's a huge difference. The Eric Prince operation, we have I don't know, maybe Jackie has information. No one's ever seen the contract. No one's ever seen any kind of terms of reference. I have no idea what their own rules of engagement are. Is there an oversight if they do something wrong? How will it be disciplined? Will it be investigated? I have no idea. On the Gang Suppression Force, it's a much brighter picture. There are human rights due diligence principles there that are binding on those forces, whoever they're going to be, the 5,500. There's a compliance mechanism, which was pretty successful for the Kenyan-led force. It was a way for the human rights folks in BNU, the Human Rights Office in Haiti, to monitor the performance of the Kenyan-led force to see if there were any problems going back to the past, sexual abuse, illegal use of force, those kinds of things. That mechanism worked pretty well. They're trying to adapting it for this larger force, which has a more robust mandate. So there are concerns I'm concerned about the lethal use of force by the force when it comes to that. And there's also a process for civilians to file complaints if they think the Gang Suppression Force has done something wrong, illegal, criminal, whatever. So there is some structure there. So I'm hoping that will work. But I share Michelle's concern about how does this work as a bigger picture of how does that work with the Haitian National Police, with this very small Haitian army, with the Gang Suppression Force, and with the private sector, the private force. I mean, because how do you, if they're going to have an operation, how are you going to time that, coordinate it, communicate it? It's still very, very unclear. But I agree with Dave. I mean, I've heard from many Haitians in gang-controlled areas, and this just shows how desperate they are. So despite whatever they've been through before, what other problems, I've talked to one guy whose sister was sexually abused by a Brazilian peacekeeper. And he said, look, I want the Brazilians back. That was a bad guy. There were a couple, but most of the Brazilians were really good. There were a couple bad ones. He said, the gangs, they're all bad. So who can help us? Anyone who can help us get them off our necks. And that's the phrase they often use. I can't live, I can't breathe. Get them off our necks. I think many Haitians are willing to take that risk and to see what happens. But I also hear them say, and I agree with them, let's make, and building on our lessons issue, let's make this the last time anything like this ever has to be done in Haiti. So let's really do it right this time so we never have to have this conversation again.
So I just want to add a couple
Jackie,
of things. Yeah, yesterday, the U.S. Charge Henry Wooster was testifying before a U.S. Senate Appropriations Committee, and he gave some numbers. Some of my colleagues don't necessarily agree with all the numbers, and some of them are kind of shocked that the numbers are public. But the numbers that he said, we're talking about 20 armed groups with a membership about 12,000. That's the number. Some people think not, maybe more than that. But he says 3,000 are the ones that are really threatening. And in terms of the Haitian police, he puts the maximum number about 400. And I've heard that. I've actually heard less in terms of that are actually fighting the gangs. And he said that on books, the Haitian National Police is 6,000 officers. And that's probably right, because we've heard this. And you have to ask, why can't we get a clear audit number, right? It goes back to that corruption issue in terms of how many police officers, warm bodies do you actually have in country? So when you're dealing with this reality, the biggest challenge of the Haitian police, nobody has questioned their ability to go head to head with these gang members, that they are, operating urban warfare. But the police has had a problem holding territory. So Michelle asked about coordination. Since the end of December, the task force, which is using the weaponized drones under the supervision of Eric Prince's outfit, they're working with the specialized Haitian National Police officers, the SWATs, the Boyds, the guys that are basically anti-gang units. And they're working with also some of the Army, and the Army is about 1,000, actually, Dave, and most of them can't shoot, unfortunately. And they're doing these operations, and they have had success. They blew up Barbecue's house. They've gone into neighborhoods where the police hasn't gone in since 2018. They've cleared roads outside of downtown. January 1st, the government actually went into the palace to have an event. But this is the reality. Today I push the gang back, or the gang invites me to come back, and I can't deal with life in the tent city, and I move in. But the police are gone. And one weekend, this group of gang members, they come into my house, they rape me, they kill me, and they move on to the next house and they set fire. That's real. That's what's been happening. So, when you have 1 in 4 people living in gang controlled neighborhoods, or a place like Harfoot is completely, run by gangs under their control, you just don't know when this is going to be your last day. And so, yes, Haitians are desperate. They want help anywhere they can get it. And they are no longer into this, this whole argument that, people in Miami like to say, no international, no this and that. But I've also said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. MINUSTA was not all that bad. It wasn't the fact of the color, it was how it was handled after the fact. When it finally became acknowledged that, hey, we're out of the earthquake, we're out of an election, so it's time to own up to it. But towards the end of MINUSTA's presence, when people were saying, "Don't pull this force out, Haiti is not ready," but because nobody wanted to spend the money, they did so. But what you saw was that the Haitian police was going out with the UN troops, and it was the Haitian police that were doing these operations that were going in, and that was the kind of training that the police needs, in order to take care of their own security. One of the reasons why you're seeing the success with this latest operations that are going on is because of the presence of Prince, or the U.S., because of the arms embargo. They're allowing the Haitian police to now have the kind of weapons that the gangs are having, to kind of get weapons that can penetrate through armored vehicles. The Haitian police had a restriction on long guns because of the U.S. embargo. So while the gangs are having AK-47s and having military weapons, the Haitian police were having revolvers, and occasionally, a semi-automatic weapon. So I think that we just really need to look at where we are at this point, what worked, what didn't work, and the international needs to be willing to not do things the same way. That has been the issue. We keep doing the same thing when the problem has changed. The crime has surged, the violence has gotten worse. And so I think the U.S., whomever, just needs to be willing to meet the crisis where it's at.
Thank you, Jackie. And I think it's quite telling that given Haiti's history, some of you, if not all of you, are saying, yes, let's try it. Let's try the gang suppression force. But it does feel like a high-risk, high-stake situation. Do you mind if I flip the script a little bit and see if there are any questions from the audience, and then we'll go back to concluding thoughts looking towards the future? Is that okay? All right. If you have any questions, yes. And can I just kindly ask you to very briefly introduce yourself and be very succinct in your comment or your question, just in the interest of time. Thank you. Over to you.
Hi, my name is Ari. Thank you so much. This panel has been really incredible. I'm a development student here. I'm wondering, in terms of elections, Bill, you mentioned that Haiti is not near ready for elections, as you were saying. And I'm wondering what the minimum requirements would be for Haiti to, like, quote unquote, be ready for elections as it comes to corruption and security and inequality, and what degree the current gangs who are engaging in a certain form of governance in the territories that they control, to what degree they would be involved in that.
Shall we respond? Do you want to respond, Bill, or anybody else, Dave, Michelle,
I want to
Jackie?
respond.
Jackie, over to you. But by the way,
You
I'm
need
also going to ask the
electoral law.
panelists to be. I'm also going to ask the panelists to be succinct because we have a few students who want to ask questions. Jackie, over to you.
It's a simple. You need an electoral law that guarantees. Nothing is ever guaranteed, but you need an electoral law that today does not create a boulevard for gang members or people with criminal profiles to be elected. There is an electoral law. It today is a boulevard for people with criminal profiles or individuals who are affiliated with gangs to run for office and to be elected. That's the reality we're in today.
Thanks. Michelle?
Well, there's also the fact that 2 million people live in Port-au-Prince, and Port-au-Prince is occupied practically 80% of the city by gangs. So right now you are having a situation where Barbecue,
Gang leader.
the strongest of the gang leaders, has created a political party. So he's going to, and Jackie is right, he's going to go and submit his papers and be a candidate for the next, and he will win. Because he will have, he controls the area where he functions.
Thanks, Dave.
Which is the reason why I think the first step in creating a climate to organize election is to completely dismantle the gangs. If you don't do that, you're gonna create a pathway for folks like Barbecue or their surrogates to be elected even to the highest office of the presidency. So I think absolutely, gangs need to be completely dismantled before elections could be held. And we often focus on Port-au-Prince. But really, it's the two biggest. Haiti is divided into 10 different departments, and you have the two biggest departments are largely controlled by gangs, right? And you have a third one, the Sud department, where they're starting to spread their control in that department as well.
And Bill, since you brought up the issue of elections, I have to put you on the spot.
I agree with everything. Security, the law, of course. But your question about the gangs participating, I can't speak for all Haitians. I'm the only non-Haitian other than Mark up here. But they, as far as I have heard, they won't want the gangs anywhere near positions of power. They want them in jail or worse, frankly.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Karina. I'm a conflict resolution student, and I'm part of a capstone project that's looking at what a UN mission might look like in Haiti with the GSF. So my question is, a lot of the reason for the intractability of the problem is that it's this Gordian knot where everything, all these different dimensions are tangled. So looking specifically at kind of three, and you can pick which one you want to focus on. So reestablishing the state, essential services, rule of law, elections. Second one being reckoning with the past. So either with the atrocities committed by gangs or even with the injustices that fuel the rise of gangs in the first place. And thirdly, on democratizing the economy. So to follow the metaphor, what should be the first string to pull to untangle this knot? And what would that look like in terms of institutions or processes with Haitian ownership? Thank you.
Thanks. And it's funny, there was a UN study a few years ago about Gordian knots, so interesting metaphor. Who wants to tackle this quite broad question?
I think you have to empower Haitians, and the way you empower Haitians is the state has to be present. Yes, Bill, they don't want anything to do with the gangs, but they may, by happenstance, end up, electing one because the gangs today, these gang leaders, they are from the society. They are the closest to the individual. So, Dave, it's like, can you really dismantle the gangs? They're not from another planet. They are there. When you listen to these gang leaders, if you cover their face, you change your voice, and you're listening, and you do the same thing with a politician who speaks closer to the population and talks about, their suffering, what they're going. It's the gang leaders, right? So we are in a situation today where these brigades, we didn't talk about them, they're turning on their own populations. The population doesn't feel the state. They talk about good gangs versus bad gangs. So how do we empower the population? Once you empower Haitians to take back their power, to believe in their power, yes, they will make the correct choices. But right now, they feel completely powerless and alone in this situation.
Well, I think, Jackie, the way you do that, one of the steps is to cut the heads of the snakes, right? We talk about, you mentioned the Chargé d'Affaires Worcester mentioned that only about 300 or so of the gang members are really the ones taking the lead in terms of all the acts of violence that's happening. And I think, there are avenues to, dismantle the gangs if you do, cut the heads of the snakes, within these different entities. And once you do that, you're able to organize, credible elections. Then, I think we could get on the path to reestablishing the Haitian state and to, solve all these other issues that the young lady referred to before.
Well, the question where to start is very difficult to answer because you have to start everywhere at the same time. This is the issue. I mean, there are so many. Reinforcing the state is essential, and getting the Haitians involved and starting again to think that they can control the situation, giving them power the way they felt they had power in 1986 when the dictatorship fell. Those are all important issues that have to be tackled at the same time. I don't think you can privilege one I think it has to be a concerted efforts on all those counts. It's going to be difficult, but better start a little bit on each one of them than just take one issue and try to solve it, because they're all entangled.
I agree, but that's not going to help with her capstone project. Just to let you know, I think she was looking for an easier answer for her capstone. Sorry. Next question, please.
Thank you to the panel for this enriching discussion. My name is Chris. I'm a SIPA alum from many years ago, 10 plus years ago. I'm also Haitian American, and I served in Haiti for my first overseas posting as a US diplomat. I think that the gang suppression force is something that, in theory, it's the best of not a lot of good options. It seems like it's an unfunded mandate. It's unclear if it's really going to come to fruition, but let's say that it does, and let's say that there's security that's reinstated there. I want to ask a relatively provocative question, which is, there's been a focus from the United States and elsewhere on elections, and the Constitution of the late 80s was very much an anti-Duvalierist constitution, which was the needed constitution at the time. That constitution has also been, it's very, very democratic, and now you have elections, in theory, almost on a yearly basis, if not a yearly basis. Is there something that could be done in terms of constitutional reform that would bring more political predictability to the country, and therefore, with more predictability, more investment, more job creation, and more dignity to the Haitian people?
Thank you. Bill.
Briefly, yes, it's been amended. It's not clear. It's very Haitian, once or twice, but at least once. And there was a constitutional reform commission that was created when this presidential council was also created. One of the things the presidential council was supposed to achieve, they were 0 for 3, was constitutional reform. But some of the reforms that are still, I hope someday will be taken up for discussion, would address what you've just raised about the number of elections, how expensive they are. Do they really need 2 houses? Could they just have a lower house and not a Senate? Streamline, make it less expensive, but also decentralize and focus on that. So I think that's down the road, because it's back to security and people staying alive for now. But at some point, I think many people realize there needs to be some reform, further reforms to that 1987 Constitution for the reasons you said.
Well, there was a project that was submitted and that the Haitian population rejected completely because of some provision in it that were anti-democratic. So this is, the idea that you can have the constitutional reform with a transitional government, it's not possible. You have to have structures that can allow for a true constitutional reform, and it's not going to be for the next election. It has to be afterwards, once there are structures that are created.
With some degree of legitimacy, or a higher degree of legitimacy.
Yeah, because
Jackie?
both President Moise, before he passed, and this presidential transitional group tried to do some new constitution, and the population, had no faith in it, because they had no faith in the people who were doing it, because it was about, the whole process got hijacked. You say that you wanted to stay in democracy, but you were allowing term limits on a president, but a governor could be elected for life. The whole process was just crazy. And then you have the argument that you can't say the current constitution doesn't work when it's never been followed, and they've always found a way to skirt around it. So yes, we've been talking for years about aligning elections, one election every 5 years, but even with elected parliament, they were rejecting that.
Thank you. All right, next question, please.
Greetings all. Thank you again for your insights and being here and your time. My name is Denzel Avery. I'm a first-year SIPA student studying development and governance and international security and diplomacy. If you allow me, I want to parallel the challenges in Haiti to the conflict resolution process. And I was recently diving into the idea of ripeness and mutual hurting stalemates being sort of a necessary evil, if you will, to broker peace, to bring people into the peace talks or in the peace process. Obviously, we're not talking about an international or a non-international armed conflict, but I'm paralleling it that way, if you will. And you mentioned earlier how we are not at a point in which we can bring certain processes into Haiti just because we want to do it correctly if we're going to do it right. So when will Haiti be ripe enough to be able to receive the proper level of aid to allow a sustainable and scalable, peaceful future?
All right, thank you.
It's how the aid is delivered. I don't think it's a number. It's, Michelle touched on this, that the aid that had been going to Haiti was moving through NGOs. It wasn't going to Haitian organizations. There's this sort of unspoken word about, well, can we trust them? Yes, we've all talked about corruption, but at some point you have to empower people to say, here's what we need in our community, and here's how we need to do this. And that has just not been the MO of the international community. The aid stays in big international organizations. And despite what just happened with the aid cuts, a lot of that money has gone back to the Beltway, to Washington. It didn't go to Haiti. After the earthquake, all the international aid, the Haitian government did not get any of that money. And so, the aid just needs to be given right. There's a lot of great organizations in Haiti that are doing a lot of great work. And because of this crisis, they're having to rely more and more on Haitians on the ground in these communities. And I think that Haitians have proven that they can lead efforts in their communities. They now have to be trusted with the money.
Thanks. Dave, Michelle, did you want to add anything? No? Okay, thanks. Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Aiden. I'm studying international security and diplomacy, and I was curious if you could elaborate on the role of Blackwater in Haiti and their operations and who has hired them.
They were
Michelle.
hired by the Haitian government, and actually by two different prime ministers. Before it, another paramilitary group. Today it's the Prince Group. They call Vectus International. And, but we have absolutely no idea of what is in the contract between it's complete, there is no transparency there. We have no idea what the contract is. Prince gave an interview where he said that he had been given a contract to control Haitian taxes and to control, going way beyond the simple issue of security. How true is that? We don't know. The Haitian government has given absolutely no information on what that contract is and what Eric Prince is doing.
And that's what Bill
So
was
the
saying.
contract for Prince is $50 million. It's for a year. He's been in the country for more than a year. This is about a year he's been in the country. This is like the third iteration of the contract. They have over 100 mercenaries on the ground. They are using much more sophisticated drones than initially. They have to get a license from the U.S. government for weapons because of the U.S. embargo on arms to Haiti. That has allowed them to now, I think, these tanks with 360s that they're able to increase. But what we've been told, the journalists that have asked the question, is that the operations are being done by Haitian police officers under the supervision of these guys. Of course, the issue has been the collateral damage. 11 kids that were killed when drones were misfired trying to get a target and missed their target. The first contract under Gary Kuni was not Eric Prince, and it was a completely different contract. It was just in terms of trying to train and try to go after some of these guys. The contract about the border that Michelle just mentioned, the Haitian newspaper, the Nouvelliste, has reported that that is a contract that has been signed. It's a 10-year contract. It doesn't name Eric Prince's company. It names a couple of other companies that seem to be a consortium, and that they will be controlling the taxes, and whatever money that they have from the increase, these companies will get a percentage of it. It is now before the Court of Auditors that are looking at it, but you're right. These have been very opaque. We have not been getting anything directly from the government and says what the rules of engagement are. And those 11 kids who were killed, who did their parents sue? Do they sue Eric Prince, or do they sue the Haitian government? We just don't know. And even with the with the border contract, that you're controlling all the tax collection. Haitians had long rejected this, and somehow this slipped through.
Thanks, Jackie. And as you said, Bill, at least the Gang Suppression Force has some safeguards on paper or mechanisms. Do you want to add very briefly, and then we'll start wrapping up?
Yeah, very briefly. Again, I'm just concerned about who's making decisions to use this kind of lethal force in situations where Jackie just raised, where you have kids killed, a pregnant woman killed after you've gone after a gang leader who wasn't touched at all. So, and who's responsible? What rules are they using? Not to get too into the weeds, I'll be very brief. I'm a lawyer, I can't help it. Haiti is not technically an armed conflict. So the laws of war do not apply. It's human rights law. And to use lethal force in a human rights law regime, you're only allowed to use lethal force if it's your last resort, you've tried everything else, and lives are in immediate danger, yours or a third party. So just sending in a drone to a place where you hope you might kill barbecue, and if a few people who aren't allied with a gang get killed, well, that's too bad. That doesn't cut it. So it's a big worry.
Thanks. How many more questions? 4? Yes, so let's do that. Let's take 4 questions, and then we can split among yourselves the answers. Please.
Hi, my name is Anne Marie O'Connor, and I represent a group called Passionist International, which is part of a coalition of religious congregations at the UN advocating for Haiti, and some doing some work on the US on a lot of the legal issues about the guns and the trafficking and drugs, and also in general with the Security Council and all. We've worked a lot with Bill, and I also want to thank journalists especially, because there's not a lot of good info that we get in the press here, and in the US. Jackie Charles, thank you so much for all your reporting. I'm just concerned of, we watch the slow movement of the international community, being at the UN, watching the Security Council, and there's a Haiti fatigue. And yet for years, we have heard from people for the last 5 years before the assassination even, we are on our own. Our government's not there for us, and we are not living. This is not living. And I guess I know there are lots of civil society organizations that are still somehow doing the work. I'm in touch with some. I especially have concerns about sexual violence being addressed. It is horrendous what women are going through, and now as displacement happens, and also kids. And so I guess I'm wondering about how now the focus is on the Gang Suppression Force, and that's important. And how, in the meantime, do you keep that focus on the humanitarian aid when the trust fund is low? It's never financed, so a very small portion. How do you really keep the focus so that people will pay attention? And because I know UNICEF has been very strong. The lives of children and the lives of women, too, that are really being demolished by this.
Thank you.
It's happening wherever war is happening, even though it's not an armed conflict, supposedly.
Thanks. Next question. So we'll take. Yeah, if I can ask you to be very brief, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
So hi, my name is Manani. I'm a first-year development student. So I was hoping if you could share some light on the reasons behind the different trajectories of Haiti and its neighbors, especially Dominican Republic, and why is there such a stark difference, the development indicators?
Thank you. And last question.
Hello, thank you all for your panel today. It was really informative. My name is Rachel Fisame, not related to the Howen either or our panelists, but my my question was more about the Haitian people, both the ones that are in the country and those of us that are a part of the diaspora. Like, what are things that we could be actively doing to maintain kind of the drive to continue and not accept that complacency? Like, what can we do for those who perhaps aren't in the country, who perhaps are forgetting about the importance and the salience, or just accepting the state that we're in right now?
Thank you.
Support the efforts of the civil society. We have a very vibrant organizations on the ground who have been doing excellent work in different areas, and I think supporting them, supporting grassroots organizations, is the best we can do.
But it probably means a change in mindset, because that's not what the international community has always been doing. Other panelists, there's the question of, there's a big focus on security. How do we make sure that it doesn't come to the detriment of the humanitarian needs and humanitarian assistance? And then also the question of the DR and Haiti and the kind of very quick comparative analysis of their trajectories. I know that can be a whole thesis. But Jackie, do you want to, or sorry, Bill, did you want to?
So let me just say with the DR at this moment, there has not been formal diplomatic relations between the Dominican Republic now for over 2 years about. The airspace, the land space is closed. If Haiti blows, the DR is the first one to get the repercussions, and yet they're not doing these formal relations. So I think that there needs to be formal relations so that there are conversations. So at the same time, more than 250,000 Haitians have been deported from the Dominican Republic since last year. So it's a very complicated relationship. People like to look at the development, but I tell everybody, at one point Haiti was even more developed than the Dominican Republic was, and it was one of the fastest growing economies, in the Caribbean, and it's where Caribbean tourism was born. So the answers, some of the issues that Michelle raised. Look, today. You have an 8-year-old, and he is being offered the equivalent of $10 from an armed gang to set fire to a church, a school, a hospital. They're all in his neighborhood, by the way. And he's also being given an AK-47 to go and make noise, and so people could flee so that the gang can come in. What is that 8-year-old being offered on the other side? To not burn down a church, a school, a hospital in his neighborhood. Why does he feel that it's okay to burn down those structures in his neighborhood? Today, that 8-year-old is not being offered anything. So we're not going to be able to kill our way out of this crisis, or the cycle is just going to continue. So to me, when I see what's coming, that's what we need to deal with. And that is what the Haitians on the ground in these neighborhoods that are being charged $2,500 US a year to rent a place in Petroville, and a 10% not under gang control, and they live on less than $2 a day. That's the question, and that's the challenge for everybody who cares about this issue, whether you're in the diaspora, whether you're at the table at the Security Council, whether you're in development, in terms of how do we address that? So it's not just a force that's coming in that we need, but that when this force leaves, the police just, aren't trained enough to go and fight the gangs, but the people are empowered enough to push back the gangs.
Thanks, Jackie. Dave, and as you answer some of these questions, maybe if you also want to segue into kind of your perspectives on the future, and I know Haitian youth is dear to your heart, and we can then start moving into concluding remarks. Over to you.
One of the important components of MINUSTA that a lot of folks ignore is the fact that you not only had the soldiers on the ground, but you also had a lot of funding going into community-based organizations, and a lot of work that was being done to create opportunities for youth and those communities, right? So I think that's one aspect that we also have to keep in mind with the gang repression force, to make sure that you have, at the same time that the force is doing its work, and also after the force eventually leaves, that you continue to have these programs, because otherwise, you'll just have the same cycle repeating itself.
Absolutely. Bill?
Do they have that mandate, though? Do they have that mandate? Bill?
The Gang Suppression Force? No, they don't. No. So it's going to be BINU, the UN office in Haiti, and back to Anne-Marie's point about the humanitarian appeal, which for Haiti this year, I believe, is $980 million. And if they get 1/10 of that, they'll be lucky given the financial situation around the world. But I think a lot it's amazing to me what can be done in Haiti with very little money. It's amazing. Viva Rio is a fantastic NGO working. They worked in the favelas in Brazil. They were present in Martissan, in Carrefour, and Bel Air before this crisis. They're ready to go back in. They had wonderful programs for youth, computer training, literacy, learning a trade, mechanics, auto repairs, whatever it was, so they had hope. And I think that's where we have to focus on too, as Dave's saying, even before DFS leaves, what can we do for youth who are in the gangs to get them out safely, where they can be rehabilitated, re-educated, and eventually, we hope, reintegrated, the 3 Rs if possible. And then how do you prevent youth from ever joining a gang again? Give them hope. There's a Haitian anthropologist, Léonec Aubon, who wrote a fantastic article called La Vie Sans, Life Without. And he just went through what life is like for these kids in these neighborhoods. Life without food, water, education, healthcare, future, hope, a job, whatever. How do we turn that around? And Haitians have this great tradition of convite from slave days, where Haitians gathered together with what little they had, and they'd help a neighbor. They'd help whatever it was that was needed. And I think we could build on that through Haitian civil society, the spirit of convite, and focus on youth, give them a hope, give them a future. And so it all has to, again, the spaghetti leaf, it's all there. You can't just, as you say, kill your way out of this. You've also have to take on these other issues almost at the same time, or as soon as it's remotely safe to do it in these neighborhoods.
Thanks, Bill. Michelle, do you want to also either respond or start?
Well, the question about the Dominican Republic and Haiti is very difficult to answer, because there is a history there which goes way back before, goes to 1937, goes to before that, the independence of the Dominican Republic. That was an independence that they won against the Haitians, because the Haitians occupied them. So it could be really too difficult right now, unless we have a new panel discussion on it. But it's certainly a very interesting question. I don't have an easy answer, but there is a lot of there are a lot of issues.
And do you want to, Michelle, continue with any final thoughts? Looking into the future,
essentially, is what I said earlier, which is, to me, the strongest thing, the strongest element to solve the crisis is trusting the Haitian civil society organizations. There are many of them. They are strong. They are vibrant, and they, some of them are doing. Programs like Nupap Domi, doing a program, for instance, and Dave can probably talk about this more than I can, where they have a program to really try to get people to know what democratic processes are. Because people who were born after the earthquake have no idea what a real election is like. There was the Martelly elections. It ended up with a lot of corruption in the country, and the gang started really taking hold of the country and teaching them what we had in 1986 after the fall of the dictatorship. Those organizations like Nupap Domi are working on instilling to the young the ideas of citizenship. And I think those things are really, really extremely important. And I keep on, every time there is an issue, an earthquake, not the earthquake, let's say a hurricane in Haiti, people ask me, what do we do? I always say the same thing: help the people on the ground. Don't give the money to the Red Cross. It won't get to Haitians. Give it to, and there are a lot of organizations in different areas of the country who actually can be the real relay to the real help to the communities.
Thank you. There's a recurring theme here. Jackie, last thought to share with the audience before we close?
Yeah, I just, we are 2 generations post-dictatorship, and we are looking at a lost generation. People have been lost to gender-based violence, who have been lost to armed gangs and even these brigades. And I just think that going forward, the first contingents of the Gang Suppression Force are scheduled to arrive on April 1st. They're supposed to be at full capability by September. And I hope that the Haitian authorities, have a plan that what are they going to do to step into the space, and that Haitians in general have a plan in terms of how do you get out of here? How do you empower youth, and how do you empower these people to take back control of their own lives?
Thank you. And Bill, and then Dave. Bill, any?
Love the Haitian Creole proverbs. Michelle's the master of that. But Kembe fem palage, which means stay strong, don't give up. And I'll put in a plug for Dave's the film his NGO just produced, Anne-Marie Bray's How Do We Keep Attention? And Jackie's writing. It's stories. I think it's making beyond the statistics. The 8-year-old girl that's been raped, and your story about one of the boys in your program that was killed by a gang. He was a budding basketball star, great student. I hope the film gets a lot of exposure all over the world. I think, frankly, that's not easy to do, but I think that's really important, that it's beyond all these statistics that can you get numbed, but they're real people. Our neighbor, and in the U.S., it's not that far away. And I think that's one way to try to keep the attention on it so that you get the right policies to help these folks.
Thanks, Bill. Dave, we're all talking here about the youth and the importance and the strength and the resilience of local organizations, so it's only fitting that you'd have the last word.
Yeah, well, I consider it really a privilege to be able to do the work that I'm doing in Haiti. I mean, I wake up every day with a lot of passion for, to keep pushing through the work, despite all the challenges. As Bill mentioned, sadly, we had one of our young men who was killed in Cité Soleil by members of a gang in 2022. He was actually on his way to meet with me regarding a scholarship that we would give him to go to university on that day. And you have a lot of young people with dreams like him, Bruce, who dreamed of being a professional basketball player and a dentist also. And being around these young men and young women every day in our office, which is sort of like a small community center that we have, and you see their dreams and their aspirations despite all these issues that we're dealing with. I mean, I've lost count how many recommendation letters I've written for our young people who want to join the police force, who want to join the army. Despite all the challenges that we're facing, I think there's still hope. Wonderful.
All right, everyone, if you can join me in thanking our panelists, Jackie, Michelle, Dave, and Bill, for a really thoughtful discussion. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you, and have a good evening, everyone.